Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to First Reaction TV. My name is J Mart. So today we're going to watch a little bit of Real Time with Bill Maher. His two guests tonight are James Kirchick and Winsome Sears. With the shooting in Nashville this past week at an elementary school involving a transgender person, the topic of transgender comes up. And unlike most news organizations and most news sites, you'll hear a good bit of honesty in this conversation. So make sure you watch until the end. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Like, comment, and I appreciate you watching.
All right, so let's talk about the trans side of this, because, of course, as soon as this incident happened, everybody broke down into their two sides. It's because of the guns and then this trans thing. And I know you feel like, I know a lot of my gay friends feel the same way, that the LGBTQ is a coalition that needs to come apart, right? That the T perhaps should be its own thing, and you're lumping people together who actually, aside from not having a lot of things in common, actually have some things that are contradicting each other.
Well, I think up to the point where the trans movement was looking for equality and dignity and respect, the same thing that the gay movement was looking for, then that's fine. And most Americans support that. And by the way, since 2020, in a Supreme Court decision that was written by a Trump-appointed judge, Neil Gorsuch, trans people are now protected under the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Where I think the problem is, where some of the conflicts are coming, is in dealing with children. Because a lot of these gender non-conforming children would otherwise grow up to be gay. I mean, if you're a boy who's wearing his sister's dresses and playing with dolls, I mean, you know, 7 out of 10 times you're probably going to grow up to be gay. And likewise for maybe a tomboy girl. Many of them will grow up to be straight too, who knows? But a lot of these kids are now being told, because of this radical gender ideology, that they're actually a member of the opposite sex. Wow. And so this is where the conflict is coming in. And I think it's...
Well, they're being also told in some... Now, it varies from school to school. But sometimes they're just being told that there really is no such thing as sex, that it's all sort of on a spectrum. Well, there's no such thing as boys and girls. You're born, if you have a penis, it could be an indication of being a male. But, I mean, it's just a jump ball. We'll figure it out later, and we can always cut it off. I mean, it's just...
That's kind of a lot of stuff that you won't hear on the mainstream news, especially if it comes down to CNN or MSNBC, because it just doesn't fit the narrative. The point is, and what James Kirchick pointed out there, and I believe he's a gay man from what, and how he was talking. So what James Kirchick was saying here was saying that, hey, for equality, we're on board. For equal rights, we're on board. But you have that. You have that under the Civil Rights Act. You have equality. You have protected rights. So now if it's about a conversation and teaching this stuff to children, now you're talking about changing history, changing biology, deciding what you're teaching young, impressionable children in school. And the word for that is literally indoctrination. And it freaks a lot of people out. A lot of reasonable, sensible people, whether you're gay, straight, black, white, Asian, it doesn't matter. That scares people once you start having someone talk to children about their sex when they're in elementary school. It's weird, it's creepy, and it's just wrong.
And actually, that's the problem, because nobody's talking about the opposite side of that equation, which is we're now finding that these children want to detransition, and they can't. They're adults now. And unfortunately, you know, the breasts were cut off, other parts were cut off, and they're lamenting that they'll never be able to have children. Well, they'll never be able to experience that
to be fair,
side of them.
Probably most, I think the studies show, most of the people who do it say they are glad they did it. Now, some of that could be sunken cost fallacy. You know what sunken cost fallacy is? It's like...
No, but I'm sure you'll tell us.
We should do a morning show together. It'd be perfect.
She's great, man. I like that.
No, but yes, it's when you put money into something, so much money, that you kind of can't admit that you made a mistake. Because you've already put a lot into it. So some of that could be that. It's like, well, I did it,
heard of that.
and I don't have a dick now. I'm just going to have to make this work. But I think most who do it, I mean, and you know, I've talked to parents about this. A lot of times you just know that kid is not gay. That kid was, you know, there was just the factory installed equipment didn't match. Okay, that's a real thing. It happens. It's rare, but it happens. And you're talking about there are other ones now.
See, I feel like Bill was trying to walk on eggshells a little bit here, where he had to get on the side of saying, yeah, I believe in transgenders. I believe that there's transgender people out there, before like he gave his full point, because like he almost knows that he's going to be attacked for saying what he's going to say. And right now, that is such a huge point that is constantly overlooked in the media about how rare it actually is. And it is extremely rare. Not being gay, not being bisexual, but transgender, actually transitioning from a male to a female or the other way around. It is extremely rare. And just making that point alone, Bill Maher will probably be attacked for it.
Because it is also somewhat trendy. I know people hate to hear that, but it's obviously true. There is an element of social contagion, or else it wouldn't be so prevalent here and not in Indiana. It wouldn't be regional. But, you know...
So there are advanced democracies in Europe that have been doing this a lot longer with children, pediatric transgender medicine. They're now dialing back the
very countries that liberals always look to.
Sweden, Britain, Finland. These are not right-wing fascist anti-trans countries.
Right.
And yet in this country, a lot of these trans activists say the science is settled. The science is settled, and if you disagree, you are a bigot and you're a fascist. That is a real problem. That kind of rhetoric, that hyperbolic rhetoric, makes it very difficult to talk about this issue.
I agree. It's like if you argue at all, you're a bigot. And you know, just the fact that they were going to have a Trans Day of Vengeance. Can you imagine any other group in this country announcing a day of vengeance in their name, what the reaction would be? I just want to ask the trans people, what are we doing, or what should we be doing that we're not doing? I asked my staff, I said, you know, I mentioned the thing you just said, that yes, June of 2020, the Supreme Court ruled that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 applies to discrimination also based on gender identity and sexual orientation. I said, but I know Biden has done other stuff. I got 4 pages of stuff the Biden administration has done, and maybe they're all deserving. But I'm just saying, sometimes I just don't know.
This is the beauty.
It seems like a power game with them. We can make you do this and this and...
So, I mean, look, Bill's obviously right here, and I mean, it's 1,000% right that you have any sort of constructive criticism or even a conversation and you say the wrong things, you will get called a bigot and they will attack you. But that is also a narrative that has been driven in media here for the past 10 years, that whether the conversation's about cops, minority communities, the border, if you don't believe what the left is telling you to believe, then we're going to call you a bigot, a racist, this phobe, a that phobe. And now another minority group has picked that up and taken it as their own slogan. And now if you don't believe everything they're telling you to believe, and if you don't do everything they're telling you to do, they're going to call you a bigot, and that's the end of the conversation. And unfortunately, to me, this is the monster that the left has created. And thankfully, Bill has been standing up to that a ton more lately, especially compared to anyone on the left side.
So now we're on.
All right, so Bill finished it off. There was some pretty decent comedy. It's really hard to talk about this kind of stuff nowadays, especially in this current political environment and identity environment that... You know, to have opinions about this, or to even try to talk to someone about this, if you have an opposing point of view, you can't... It's hard to get your voice out there without being called a bigot, or this, or a that, or a fascist, or whatever term that the crazy radical left wants to use nowadays, that even having a conversation about what our kids should be taught, just nobody's listening to each other. Nobody's listening to each other. I don't know too many parents out there that want their kids indoctrinated. I don't know too many parents out there that would want their kids taught about sex, regardless whether it's straight sex, gay sex, trans sex. None of it should be being taught in schools. None of it. And when I look back on my life, going through school, going through elementary school, going through middle school, I knew some of my teachers might have been married, but they never brought up their spouses. They never talked about going on dates with their spouses. They never talked about having nights out with their spouses. They didn't talk about their private lives at all. And I'm having a really hard time connecting the dots here with, like, what the hell is actually going on in our school systems to where people think that they actually need to interject their private life into school, period. Their private life should have nothing to do with the classroom at all, at any time. And it seems like that's what most of this is about now. It's like the whole trans debate is, okay, you guys have equality, you have protected rights, but the topic of schools is where this all lays on. And it's like they are fighting like hell to make sure that they are allowed to teach you this in school. And then they'll say, well, we're not teaching kids this in school. But then if you release a thing called the Parents' Bill of Rights and say, okay, look, we're not going to talk about sex in schools, guess what? They oppose it. Or they call you fascist for saying we're not allowed to talk about sex in school. Well, if you're not teaching it, why would it matter? Why would it matter if no one's being taught this in schools, if no one's being indoctrinated, if no one's bringing up trans and this to younger kids? Then it shouldn't matter to begin with. So I'm just having a really hard time connecting the dots here because there's a big gap in between, well, we're not teaching it, but we're really mad that we're not allowed to teach it. That's confusing to me. Extremely confusing. But let me know what you guys think. I appreciate you watching. If you made it this far, please hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel out a lot. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. Like, comment, let me know what you guys think, and thanks for watching.